Hello F11 members and welcome to the Fundamentals of Post-Production video tutorials for issue 62. That's March 2017. So what we have in front of us on the screen is a picture from our recent trip to Argentina. This is Salta, one evening, lovely light on the facade of the church there against a dramatic background. If you read the How It's Done feature on this particular shoot, I explain my approach here, how I wanted to not just create a boring picture of a church, but I wanted something going on in the picture as well, some kind of activity to just lift the whole picture. And so what I have here is a blurry car here and a dog just in the right place in front of the church, just to give some sort of interest. Now, this was quite a tricky image to shoot. You can read the full story behind our trip to Argentina, of course, in the Behind the Lens feature, and also watch the video blog. But this particular shoot had various problems, which I'm going to talk you through now. So if we go into Lightroom, you'll see the raw image straight out of the camera. And what I've done is I have my foreground here in shadow, and so I exposed for the shadow area to capture the car and the dog here. But that meant that I'm getting all this horrible clipping of my highlights in the bright sky. So what I'm going to do is merge exposures using this one here and this one here, which has been exposed to retain all the detail there in the bright sky. And I'm going to merge them together. Now the first thing I need to be aware of though is if I look at this image here, yes, I used the 17mm tilt and shift lens here. Here's the details of the shoot and you can see TSE 17mm. That's the tilt and shift lens used at maximum elevation to keep all my verticals perpendicular and parallel to the edge of the frame. It's worked fine, but at maximum shift and at that kind of focal length, 17mm, very wide angle, I'm getting a little bit of barrel distortion there. If I zoom in the image here, you will see here there's this slight curvature of the verticals here. That's barrel distortion, and if I go up to my View tab here in Lightroom and come down to Loop Overlay and click on Grid, now that overlays a grid and you can see the barrel distortion there. If I refer it to the grid, it's really quite pronounced. So what I'm going to do is apply lens corrections to cure that. Now normally I would come down here to my lens corrections, excuse me, just get rid of that. If I come down here to my lens corrections tabs, where's this gone? Here it is. If I go to Profile and enable profile corrections, now normally Lightroom would detect what lens I was using and apply the corrections to take that out. But as far as I'm aware, and you may well correct me, there is no lens profile corrections, or there is no lens profile for this 17mm TSE lens. It's a specialist lens, so that option is not there. So I'm going to have to do it manually. So if I go to Manual now, and now I'm going to use this distortion. If I just zoom out here, back again, and now if I use this distortion slider to cure the barrel distortion. If I go that way, it's taking it out. Obviously I can go way too far. If I go the other way, it's magnifying it. Okay, so what I need to do is really look at the edge of that of the church here in reference to the grid and apply the lens distortion accordingly. Zoom back in again to help me. I think I'm going to go to something that's a little bit too much there Round about 11, yeah, a little bit more, maybe 15. Oh. Now if I look at this edge here, you can see it's pretty much parallel to in line with the grid there. So I think that's cured that well. If I zoom back out again, you can see now the effect of that though. I've got these white areas around the edge of the frame where it's distorted the image. So I'm going to take care of that with cropping. Let's just take off that grid view there now. So if I click on view, come down to loop overlay and click off the grid. And excuse me, I'm using a new Wacom tablet here, graphics tablet. I'll be talking you through that next month actually, but I'm just still getting used to it. It's very sensitive, you see. Okay, so there's the grid, the barrel distortion taken care of. Now I want to crop the image, so if I go up here to crop there, now I'm going to make sure that the key here is locked. If I click on and off that key, that has the effect of locking and unlocking the aspect ratio. Now I want to keep, in this particular case, the 2:3 aspect ratio of the original image. So now if I just move one corner of the image there, it enables me to crop and yet keep the aspect ratio. So I'm going to crop out as little as possible. Every pixel is precious. And if I come, I'm going to look at the white bits around the edge. I can afford to retain a few of those because I can use the content aware fill tool in Photoshop to deal with them subsequently. So I'm going to click on done there. Now that has cured. I've still got this white area down that edge. I'm just going to fine tune that. That's not quite perfect. Okay, I'm pleased with that. I've just got a little bit of white around the edges there, but as I said, we can deal with that in Photoshop subsequently. Now, what I need to do is make sure that those same kind of corrections, i.e. the barrel distortion correction and the cropping, is applied to both images I want to merge. So now if I copy those settings there, so go down here to copy and copy all of those settings. Now if I go to the other image here, and now if I go paste there, it's going to paste those same settings, so both have the same barrel distortion applied. Okay, so now let's just deal with this picture here, and what I want to do is process this to be merged in Photoshop, and that means I'm going to look just at the bottom of the image there. I'm going to ignore the bright top 2/3 of the image. I'm just processing it for the bottom. So, as usual, I come down and I look at my blacks and my white points. I can see from the histogram there, there's really no movement I can use on my blacks. Just by holding down the Alt key and sliding the black slider to the left, I can see when clipping of blacks starts to appear, and I can go to about -8 or so before I start losing any shadow information there. My whites, well, I can see they're clipping here, but that's of course where the red is indicated in the bright sky. If I do the same with my white slider, hold down the Alt key and move the whites to the right, I immediately start clipping highlights. Not just in the sky, but in the bright colonnades of the church, indicated by the red there. I don't want that, so I'm actually going to leave those whites untouched and actually apply a little bit of highlight retrieval to pull back some of these whites, not up here, but down here in the brighter part of the church. Okay, next thing to do is look at, to sharpen the image as usual. Okay, I'm going to put sharpen scenic, and I'm going to darken down the image because this shadow area there, if it's too bright, when I come to merge the images put together, it's just not going to look realistic. So I'm going to darken it down a touch there to about that. And now I'm going to come to the other image, this one, bright one here, and process that for actually looking at two things. Firstly, the sky and the church itself. So let's just look at the sky itself now. And again, we go through this business of looking at blacks and whites. So I'm going to hold down the Alt slider, look at my blacks. Now if I shift that to the left, I immediately start clipping my blacks, but they're down in the shadow area of the image, the street, where I'm not particularly concerned about them, but nevertheless, they very quickly start moving up into the top of the picture there. So again, I'm not going to touch them. Now, what about my whites? Hold down the Alt slider, move the whites to the right, and as you can see, I can go a fair way before I start to clip whites there. Okay, a few highlights here starting to clip there, but actually I'm going to merge three different frames here, two captures, two conversions from this same image actually. So I'm not concerned by the sky, I'm just looking at the church. So I'm going to go a bit further on the whites until you see where those reds start to appear. That is the bright areas in the church, and I obviously want to hold on to them. So I'm going to move my slider back to about plus 35, as far as I can go without losing any of those bright areas in the church. Okay, I'm going to apply a little bit of vibrance, and I'm going to brighten up the image a touch just by taking the tone curve and moving it up. Again, I'm not looking at the sky, I'm looking at the church itself. And I'm now going to convert that to a TIFF and open it in Photoshop. Okay, I've done that. That's now awaiting my attention in Photoshop, but I'm not finished with this raw yet, because what I'm going to do now is actually look at the sky itself. And what I want here is a really dramatic sky. It is a dramatic sky. I really want to portray that. So I'm going to come down here and go linear on my point curve, and now just pull this point curve down until I get the kind of sky looking the darkness that I want. I want that real mood. So wonderful sky. It was a beautiful evening light there in Salta, and I really want the drama of that sky. So that kind of density, I think. And now I'm going to convert that and open it up in Photoshop, and we'll have the three frames, which will then merge together in part 2 of these video tutorials. So I'll see you there.